Today we are talking Billie Jean. How tennis star Billie Jean King changed women's sports. Anything Billie Jean did, she did it all the way. When she ran fast. When she played hard. Billie Jean dreamed of growing up to be just like her hero, Mickey Mantle. One day, her father took her to the baseball game. Billie Jean realized something terrible. All of the players on the field were men. What was a girl who loved sports supposed to do? How about tennis? Asked her parents. Girls played tennis. Billie Jean had never heard of tennis, but if she could run and jump and hit the ball, it sounded good to her. She saved up her nickels, dimes, and pennies, bought a tennis racket, and went off to a lesson at the public park. On her very first swing, she hit the ball over the net. From then on, it was tennis all the way for Billie Jean. Billie Jean learned fast. Soon, she was ready to play in her first tournament. On the big day, she wore the nice white tennis shorts her mother had sewn. But when the players gathered for a photo, Mr. Jones, the man in charge, told Billie Jean to stand aside. Girls were supposed to wear a dress or skirt. Peanut butter, grumbled Billie Jean. She would show them all what really mattered wasn't what she wore, but how she played the game. Billie Jean practiced more than ever. She ran faster. She played harder. After 3 years, she was so good, Mr. Jones agreed to let her go in a national championship if she beat the one girl she had never beat before. When Billie Jean walked out onto the court, the net looked very high. The other girl looked very far away. Billie Jean bounced the ball twice for luck. Then she tossed it in the air and served. The match didn't last long. Even Billie Jean was surprised. Not only had she won, she won in just 2 sets. She was going to the Nationals, all the way across the country in Ohio. But she couldn't go alone. Mr. Jones said girls had to have a chaperone. 2 airplane tickets. Billie Jean could barely pay for one. She and her mother had to take the train instead, a 3-day ride. By high school, she was one of the best teenage players in America, but no one paid any attention to girls' sports. Hardly anybody noticed when Billie Jean left from England 2 days before graduation. She was going to complete the most famous, most important tennis tournament in the whole world. The fans at Wimbledon loved Billie Jean. They leaned forward when she charged up to the net and smashed the ball. They laughed at the way she yelled, "Peanut butter!" when she missed a shot. They applauded when she tossed her racket in the air after she won a match. Still back home, no one seemed to care. At college, even the worst tennis players on the boys' team got a scholarship. Billie Jean could beat the best of them, and yet she had to work 2 jobs to pay for school. But Billie Jean kept practicing. She ran the fastest. She played the hardest. 5 years after her first Wimbledon, Billie Jean won. Being a world tennis champion meant answering a lot of questions. Where did you learn that swing? Do you have any tennis tips for your fans? Are you ready for your next match? But reporters never asked about Billie Jean's game. Where did you get the necklace? Do you change your hair? Aren't you ready to quit tennis and have babies? The newspapers called Billie Jean a housewife. In fact, her tennis paid the bills, but women tennis players were paid less than men, much less, and the prizes for the men kept going bigger, while the prizes for a woman shrank. The men in charge of tennis said it just made sense. After all, it was okay to see the men, didn't they? Nobody cared about women's sports. Peanut butter! Billie Jean Billie fans wanted to see good tennis. No matter who was playing, 8 other top players agreed. Together, they started an all-women's tennis tour. Billie Jean sold tickets, talked to fans, answering questions for reporters. Where's your husband? Does he mind that you're away? Aren't you ready to quit tennis and have babies? And still play harder than anyone else. In 1972, Billie Jean won all 3 of the biggest tournaments: the French Open, the US Open, and of course, Wimbledon. Sports Illustrated magazine named her the first ever sportswoman of the year. Fans love Billie Jean and women's tennis. Not everyone was happy, though. Once Bobby Riggs had been a world tennis champion, he missed those days. When he saw women players getting money and attention, he wanted more money and attention too. Bobby told reporters that men were the best at everything, including tennis. He said any man could easily beat any woman. He said he could beat Billie Jean. The match was called the Battle of the Sexes, and it was about much more than tennis. All over the United States, women were fighting for equal rights. But not everyone believed that men and women should be equal. Billie Jean knew that if she lost to Bobby Riggs, some people would say women couldn't play tennis or do anything as well as men. This was a match she had to win. On September 20th, 1973, the Houston Astrodome held the biggest, loudest, most excited tennis crowd in history. Across the country and around the world, millions more watch on TV as famous sportscaster Howard Castle announced, "Here comes Billie Jean King." Howard Castle said Billie Jean was pretty. He said if she let her hair grow long and took her glasses off, she looked like a movie star. Peanut butter. Billie Jean wasn't there to look pretty. She was there to win. Billie Jean took her place on the court. She bounced the ball twice, then she bounced it twice again and served. Bobby ran, but Billie Jean ran faster. Bobby played hard, but Billie Jean played harder because anything she did it all the way. When Billie Jean won, she tossed her racket in the air. The crowd went wild. Across the country and around the world, girls and women cheered. Many boys and men cheered too. That night, a lot of people changed their minds about what a woman can do. And children dreamed of growing up to be just like their hero, Billie Jean. The end.